All right, so we're diving deep today into how to learn English, especially if you're just starting out.
Sounds good.
We've got a really interesting episode of the Learn Easy English with Us podcast as our source material, and it is packed with practical advice that, honestly, anyone can benefit from.
Oh, for sure. I think making language learning accessible and enjoyable is so important.
Totally agree with that. And, one of the first things I highlighted was just how globally important English is.
Yeah.
Did you know that over 1.5 billion people speak English?
It's incredible.
It's wild. It's essential for business, travel, the internet, so many things. And even, just basic English skills can open up so many possibilities.
Yeah, absolutely. English has really become like the connecting language, hasn't it? It connects people from all over the world.
It really does.
And gives you access to so much information and opportunities.
Yeah. Now, something they emphasized was mastering simple words and phrases right at the start.
Right.
Especially greetings.
The base.
But they went beyond just, listing common greetings like hello or good morning.
Yeah.
They talked about how greetings can actually give you insights into cultural differences.
Interesting.
Because how formal or informal you should be when greeting someone can really vary a lot depending on where you are in the world.
Oh, yeah, for sure. It's not just memorizing words.
Right.
It's also understanding, how to use them, in different cultural contexts.
It's all about the context.
And greetings are a great starting point, I think, because they're often short and easy to practice, right?
Yeah, definitely. All right. They also talked about some common mistakes that English learners make.
Okay.
Like mixing up pronouns, especially he and she.
Yeah, pronouns can be tricky.
Yeah, they can be. So understanding grammatical gender is really important here.
It is.
Because it's not just about knowing he is for male and she is for female. It's about how that gender then affects other parts of the sentence.
Right. It affects everything around it.
Exactly. Like, in English, if you're talking about a woman, you would say she is tall.
Yeah.
But also her book, she likes it. It all connects.
It's a good point. And I think it shows how, one small mistake can sort of, have this ripple effect.
Yes, exactly. It highlights how interconnected grammar is.
Totally.
Another common mistake they talked about was the a versus an rule.
The articles.
Yeah, so just as a refresher, we use a before words that start with a consonant sound.
Right.
And an before vowel sounds.
Okay.
Like a car and an apple.
Easy examples.
But it can be tricky because it's not always about the letter itself.
Right, yeah.
It's about the sound.
The sound, yeah.
So, for example, it's an hour, even though hour starts with the letter H.
Yes. That one always gets people.
It does. And, it's interesting. They suggested that paying attention to how articles work in your native language could actually help with this.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Do you have similar sound-based rules?
Right, exactly.
Often, you can actually draw connections between languages. And that can make learning English grammar a bit smoother.
It's all about finding those patterns, right? Those connections.
Absolutely. It's like finding those little shortcuts in your brain.
Love that.
They also highlighted the importance of correct pronunciation.
Of course.
They used three and tree as examples.
Oh, yeah. Classic examples.
Because, those subtle differences in pronunciation can completely change the meaning of a word.
Oh, absolutely. Even a slight mispronunciation can lead to, total misunderstanding.
It really can.
Mastering pronunciation is so crucial for clear communication.
Couldn't agree more. Now, let's talk about some fun ways to practice.
Okay, let's do it.
They talked about watching English movies with subtitles, but with a bit of a twist.
A twist?
Yeah.
I like twists.
So they recommended actively listening for specific words or phrases.
Ooh.
Like the ones we've been talking about.
Oh, that's cool.
So it's like you're watching the movie, but also kind of doing a little listening exercise at the same time. It can really help to solidify what you're learning.
Makes sense. You're engaging with it more actively.
Exactly. And they also talked about listening to English music and singing along.
Always a good time.
Which is fun.
Yeah.
And it helps you work on your pronunciation and listening skills at the same time.
Yeah.
And then there are classic word games like Scrabble and crossword puzzles.
Oh, the classics.
Which can help you expand your vocabulary.
Yeah. What I love about those, though, is that they can be social activities.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Playing them with friends or family.
Make it more fun.
Yeah, it adds a fun, motivating element to learning.
Definitely. And it reinforces what you've learned in a more relaxed setting.
It takes the pressure off, right?
It does, yeah.
Yeah.
It does. Now, they also encouraged listeners to have actual conversations in English.
Oh, real conversation.
Real conversations.
All right.
Even if they're short and simple.
I like that.
They even challenge their listeners to have at least one brief exchange in English this week.
Oh, wow.
Something as simple as like, hello, how are you? With a friend.
That's a good challenge.
Yeah, and it's a great way to kind of overcome that fear of making mistakes.
Right, because often we get so caught up in trying to be perfect.
Yes.
That we forget, the whole point is to communicate.
So true. I know I've been guilty of that.
Oh, we all have.
But even that small step, like saying, hello, how are you?
Yeah.
That's a victory.
It is. It is. Every little interaction builds your confidence.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it really is all about those small victories, those baby steps,
Yeah.
moving you forward on that language learning journey.
Yeah, and they also mentioned another really simple but effective practice technique.
Oh, yeah.
Talking to yourself in English.
Oh.
Which I have to admit I do sometimes.
Really?
Yeah, like if I'm trying to work through a problem or just organize my thoughts. It's a great way to just get comfortable with the sounds of the language, the rhythms.
Yeah, you're creating that immersion environment, even if it's just in your own head.
Exactly.
Yeah, they use the example of describing simple actions like, I am drinking water.
Right.
Which sounds so basic, but it gets you thinking in English.
Totally, and that's crucial.
Yeah.
Now, the episode also featured a short story
Oh, fun.
called A Day at the Park.
Okay.
And it was such a clever way to demonstrate how basic verbs and vocabulary can be used in a simple narrative.
Right.
It wasn't a complex story,
Yeah.
but it was really effective in showing how you can start using English creatively, even as a beginner.
Totally. I think the story followed a character named Anna,
Yes.
who went to the park and saw people walking, running children, playing simple present tense verbs,
Right.
but they immediately paint a scene in your mind.
Yeah, and then Anna sat on a bench, had some water, noticed a happy dog nearby.
Ah.
A boy threw a ball for the dog, and Anna smiled, realizing how much she enjoyed being at the park.
Simple, but effective.
Right. Such a simple story.
Yeah.
But it had action emotion, a clear beginning, middle, and end.
It's a perfect example of how you don't need complex grammar or a huge vocabulary to tell a story.
Yeah.
And then the podcast hosts challenged their listeners to try repeating sentences from the story.
Yes.
And even creating their own simple stories using the same structure.
I love that.
What a great way to get actively involved in the language.
It encourages listeners to put those language skills to work right away.
Yeah.
Don't just passively listen, but actually try using the words and sentences yourself.
Exactly. That active engagement is so crucial for making the language stick.
Now, towards the end of the episode, the hosts had some really encouraging words for their listeners.
Yeah, that's nice.
Yeah. They emphasized the importance of consistency over perfection.
I like that.
It's not about getting everything right all the time, but about practicing regularly, even if it's just for a few minutes each day.
It's about building that habit.
Exactly. And they reminded listeners that every small step, every conversation, every story they tell builds upon the last, gradually increasing their confidence and fluency.
Makes sense.
And they even wrapped up the episode by reminding everyone to subscribe to their podcast for more language learning tips.
A classic podcast outro.
But what I found really valuable was their focus on making language learning enjoyable.
Yeah, that's so important.
So much of the time, people get bogged down in the grammar rules and feel like they're not progressing fast enough.
Right, it feels like a chore.
Yeah.
But the Learn Easy English with Us podcast really emphasized finding fun ways to practice, whether it's through movies, music, games, or even just talking to yourself.
So true. And they encourage listeners to celebrate those small wins along the way.
Yes.
Don't get discouraged if you make mistakes. It's all part of the process.
We all make mistakes.
Right.
Everyone learns at their own pace. There's no need to compare yourself to others.
Right.
The key is to find what works for you and enjoy the journey.
I love that. So what does all of this mean for our listener today? What are some of the key takeaways we want them to walk away with?
Well, I think the biggest takeaway is that learning English doesn't have to be a chore.
Yeah.
It can be fun and rewarding if you approach it with the right mindset.
I couldn't agree more. It's about finding those methods that resonate with you.
Exactly.
Whether it's watching movies, singing along to music, playing word games, or having simple conversations.
It's about finding what you enjoy.
Yeah. And it's about remembering that every small step counts.
For sure.
Don't get overwhelmed by the big picture. Just focus on making progress one day at a time.
One step at a time.
Now, before we wrap things up, I want to leave our listener with a final thought.
Okay.
Something to ponder as they continue their English learning journey.
Love it.
We talk about the power of storytelling, even with a limited vocabulary.
Right.
So my question for our listener is this. What simple English story can you tell today?
That's a fantastic challenge.
It could be about your day,
Yeah.
something you observed, or even a funny anecdote.
Yeah.
The key is to put those language skills into practice and have fun with it.
And you never know. Maybe sharing that story with someone else could spark a new level of confidence and fluency.
Totally. It's all about taking those small steps, finding joy in the process, and remembering that everyone has a story to tell.
Beautifully said.
Yeah, it really makes you think about how you approach learning anything new, doesn't it?
It does. I think what struck me most was how that podcast, the Learn Easy English with Us podcast,
Yeah.
how they managed to take these potentially dry topics like grammar rules
Mm-hmm.
and make them engaging.
I know. It's like they found a way to inject, like, personality and even humor
Yeah.
into something that could easily feel like,
A lecture.
yeah, gag.
And I think that's so key for anyone learning a new language, because
Yeah.
if you're not enjoying the process,
Right.
it's so easy to get discouraged and just give up.
Oh, 100%. So for all of you listening out there, remember this.
Okay, here we go.
Learning English doesn't have to be about textbooks and rigid drills.
Right.
Embrace those moments of joy.
Yeah, those aha moments.
Yes, that make the journey so rewarding.
I love that.
Whether it's finally understanding a tricky grammar rule,
Yeah.
or, successfully ordering a coffee in English, or having a simple conversation with a new friend, celebrate those victories.
Yes.
No matter how small.
They all matter.
They really do. And remember, we're here to support you on your language learning adventure. So keep practicing, keep exploring, and most importantly, keep having fun. We'll see you next time for another deep dive into a fascinating topic. Until then, happy learning.
Bye for now.